Thank you all for tuning in to Primitive Organic Garden and Guitar today. Trying to see how many bell peppers are back here. I think this one plant's got 5 or 6 on it already. I'm actually going to have to abandon this raised bed, which is really unfortunate. It's now completely been taken over by dollarweed, so it doesn't really make sense for me to keep planting things in here or keep fertilizing. Oh, am I standing in fire ants again? I literally did this the exact last time I filmed this video in this same spot. It's unbelievable. I've put down fire ant killer a couple times, but it's not always very effective here because we get so much rain. Wow, what an idiot. Same fire ant mound in front of the same raised bed with the same camera in my hand. It's like deja vu. I did this exact same thing a week ago. Huh. I guess I forgot this tiny little thing is here. Most fire ant mounds are like huge around here. I had some big ones in the yard earlier, but this tiny little thing you can't even see. Ugh! Yikes. I ought to just start this video over. This is my favorite zinnia. This is a weird one. I don't know what this one's called. Anyway, this raised bed got infested with dollarweed, so I'm not going to really keep planting stuff in here or keep fertilizing it. I'm going to let what's in here keep producing. I mean, it looks like the bell peppers are sort of holding their own because they were in here months before the dollarweed got started. But I'm not going to further put any effort. I've been coming out here trying to pull dollarweed, but it's way too deep rooted. Luckily it is edible, so I'm not panicking, but probably once I get all the bell peppers out of here at the end of fall when our frost comes, if we get a frost, then I'll probably actually till this up. Usually I do a no-till approach on almost everything now, but there's no way to get rid of something like dollarweed that's so deeply rooted with these intense underground rhizomes. Tilling would be the only way to get rid of something like that. Dollarweed seems to do well in hot, wet conditions, so the best time for me to till this up would probably be early winter when it's cool and dry. But yeah, we'll do a quick garden tour. I can put my sandals on. They don't have fire ants all over them still. Got some shishito peppers that are going to be for fall, and some, I think these are pineapple tomatoes. I can't really remember what variety. I don't really mess with tomatoes anymore. It's kind of a, I don't want to say an amateur crop, but it just doesn't provide a lot of calories, and it's just an insane amount of work. This was all carrots. I'm not kidding. Out of this like 2 foot by 2 foot little, this isn't even a raised bed. I threw a piece of cardboard on top of the grass last year and put some compost on top, and I probably got 80 carrots out of here this year. I've been pickling most of those. Little sunflower that came out of the bird feeders. Yeah, but let's go look at the real garden in the back real quick. This is a pretty shishito pepper. This thing's probably made about 60 pods so far this year. Pods, I said pods, fruits. Pretty tasty. Got more cucumbers. Another nice shishito plant. It's my new favorite variety of pepper. It's just prolific in its production, fast growing, and the flavor is unmatched when they're red. These are all cucumbers here as well. I probably planted them too close together, but there's quite a bit of fence that they can share. They're growing probably 4 to 6 inches a day at this point with all the heavy rain, and I think I put quite a bit of sodium nitrate, Chilean nitrate, in the soil mix. Look, it's a little farm dog supervising from the supervisor's chair. I'm really hoping that these cucumbers climb into this oak tree. I think that would be really neat to have cucumbers hanging from an oak tree. I'm not sure if they'll be able to actually get that big before disease gets them, but we'll see. Beautiful little seed-started lemon tree that survived the winter last year. It was one of the few that was out here that didn't seem to get any damage. Got plenty of green beans, even though it's too hot this time of year for green beans. They're in almost complete shade, and they seem to be doing well. Just need to get out here and pick all these pods. I wish I'd given them a bigger trellis to climb, but... Oh, I didn't mention I have dill and leeks in with every cucumber plant, because I like to pickle cucumbers with dill and leeks. This is one of my few tomatoes that managed to survive this year. I think I over-fertilized it. The leaves are way too dark green, but it's making, I don't know, a good 15-20 cherry tomatoes every couple days. I think it's a little happier over here in the shade now that we're getting days that are 100 degrees. Sweet potatoes are just really going nuts. There's sweet potato vines like way over here now. I don't want to get lost in this briar patch back here, but there's some summer daikons that are volunteering. You don't usually see daikons in the summer, but I mean, this one's, again, in full shade. It gets almost no sunlight ever, and this is a nice sized daikon. If I let this grow from now, June, all the way until like January, this thing will probably be the size of like a 2-liter soda bottle or larger. But yeah, that's just another thing that volunteered. I think I was talking about in another video recently that it's not really a garden anymore, it's just kind of a food forest now. And the vast majority of things out here I don't even plant anymore. Things just go to seed. Some little green bean plant trying to make pods way close to the ground. Yeah, so it's less of a directed effort at this point and more of just kind of foraging. So that's why I find random things like daikons in the middle of the summer. I'm waiting for these lemons to turn yellow. They've been the same size for a month and a half. Thing's got 15 or 20 lemons on it, and it's in a tiny, tiny little pot. I feel really bad for it. That's my fault. Got a few pests out today. Got some harlequin bugs or some nonsense. I've also been seeing a few stink bugs here and there. And I just saw something else a second ago. Oh, a little Japanese beetle maybe on the mint. I was watching another garden channel on YouTube the other day, and one of my favorites, Green Garden Guy in Hawaii, and he was talking about how he just observes things most of the time. It's like 80% observation and 20% action. I see pests out here occasionally, but the only pests I really actually do anything about are maybe fire ants. And half the time I don't even do anything about those. It's not that I'm like a lazy gardener or anything, it's just that if you don't really do anything about pests, predators and other things will just come in and take care of them. Birds. I got tons of frogs out here now that are eating mosquitoes. So it's not about doing nothing and being lazy, it's just about realizing when you can kind of let nature take care of things without having to, you know, put in a lot of effort or screw things up. This is a pretty sizable area to plant, and it's all extremely fertile ground. The measurements of this are about, let's see, my foot's foot. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's about 8 feet wide by about 12 to 14 feet long. And at the end it kind of tapers because this is actually a different raised bed over here. It's now a compost pile with collards that are over summering. So I'm not going to really mess with that compost pile right now with the collards in it. This otherwise would be like 10 foot by 15 foot. Now it's about 9 feet by, I don't know, 14, tapers off. But this is a big enough area that I could totally plant corn if I wanted to and actually get pollination. It's the first time I've had enough fertile ground, well-rich, soil that, could support something as heavy feeding as corn. Plus I got the sodium nitrate this year, which I've never had before, which is rocket fuel for corn. That's the only organic fertilizer I've ever seen that is like jet fuel for plants. It works even better than fish emulsion in my opinion. And it seems to be a little bit cheaper, probably less sustainable, not sure about that. Neither of them are really sustainable in my opinion. Sodium nitrate's mined from thousands of miles away, and we're mining it way faster than it. It doesn't even really replenish itself, I don't think. It's a mineral. I don't really know much about how minerals form, but I know it got pulled from the organic list a few years ago because they were worried about the sustainability of it. I think it's now technically certified organic again, but I had a hard time finding it. Amazon has pulled it recently from online, or the suppliers that were selling it on there apparently don't have it anymore. I'm not really sure why that is. Anyway, not only is this a little bit shaded by this oak tree here, but this area is also now shaded on this side by massive cucumber and pole bean vines. So I'm still on the fence about whether or not I want to plant corn here. Most years I would never plant corn, and I don't advise home gardeners to plant corn unless they're really just playing. There's a difference between feeding yourself and just kind of goofing off and having fun. And before the pandemic, I was all about just having fun in the garden, you know, like plant 15 or 20 weird varieties of tomatoes that may or may not even grow here, and, you know, plant all kinds of fun stuff. But now that I'm not going to the grocery store anymore, I'm a lot more concerned about calories and protein. So if I had any sense, I would literally plant this entire area in cowpeas. Black-eyed peas, crowder peas, something like that. Southern peas, whatever you want to call them. There's a lot of different varieties and varietal groupings, but that would be the best bang for your buck in terms of southern food security. They'll tolerate extremely hot weather. They don't really have pest or disease issues, and they crank out more protein than any other legume. You can also eat the leaves, unlike almost all other legumes. So cowpeas, #1 survival crop in the South, hands down, no questions asked, at least in the summer. But soybeans would also be a pretty good choice. I do have a lot of soybean seed left at edamame, and I could plant this whole area in soybean or split it between soybean and cowpea. That would also be a pretty responsible choice. The playful, fun gardener in me wants to plant sweet corn, which isn't really a good idea because it's a lot of area because you need wind pollination, so you got to take up a ton of space for corn. It's a very heavy feeder, and it's going to pull a lot of nutrients out of your garden, and it's not going to really produce a whole lot of calories. Like, each corn plant, if you're lucky, you'll make 2 nice cobs, and yeah, they got some sugar in them, but it's not really a whole lot of vitamins and minerals and actual protein and sustenance per land area used. The amount of calories and protein I would get out of something like cowpeas and soybeans would, I need to do the math, but it would probably be 4 to 5 times easily the caloric content of corn, and 10 times the protein content for sure. But especially if I were eating the leaves of the cowpeas too. But I don't know, I mean, I'm still a little bit on the fence about it. I thought about maybe interplanting soybeans, cowpeas, and corn. I've just never had enough ground to plant corn before, and I've always been like, oh, screw planting corn, because you can buy it at the store for like 20 cents an ear. But I don't go to the store anymore, and it's not too late. I mean, there's a lot of corn varieties that are 75, 85 days. We don't have frost coming for 6 months probably. We have another 5 months of no frost, if we get frost at all. So we probably will, but it's going to be another 5 months of no frost, and it's not even July yet. So I mean, there's been years where the first frost wasn't until middle of January. So I could probably have 2 or 3 more crops of corn this year if I wanted to. The days obviously get slightly shorter, but that just means that, you know, your corn variety that says 75 days to harvest might be, you know, 90 days to harvest if the days are getting a little shorter. But so yeah, I don't know if I'm going to plant this today or not. Maybe I'll put this video up first and y'all tell me in the comment section what you think I should do. Should I waste some of this area or all of this area on corn that's kind of just a fun crop, or should I be responsible and plant the whole thing in protein? I do have some soybeans over here, so we're supposed to be doing a garden tour, and I stopped and ranted about all this, but I mean, it's a beautiful piece of ground because most of this section in the far back here, and to an extent all the way up to about here, is all hugelkultur that's been maturing over like 3 or 4 years. So all that wood down there is now well rotted. Every time I come out here, all you gotta do is take a handful of dirt anywhere, and there's 20 or 30 earthworms just everywhere. Earthworms and all kinds of other worms, little composting worms and red wiggler worms, and those are the architects of the soil, and they're just, you know, turning all that decaying wood and carbon into, you know, really useful nutrients for fungi and other microorganisms that then are going to feed your plants. And between the hugelkultur, all the chicken manure I've put out here, this hasn't been tilled up like ever. It's all been pretty much no-till, just a lot of cover crops, chop and drop. I've had legumes, mainly like pole beans and stuff in here almost every spring and fall. Never really planted anything heavy feeding in here. It's had radishes in it. It's been continuously cover cropped for quite a while now. There's some Malabar spinach in here that is creeping up, some parsnips over here. This was a compost pile for a while and had a bunch of avocado trees in it. A lot of them died in the winter, but you can see some of the dead avocado trees are actually resprouting. This is a completely dead stump of an avocado that died in like 25-degree weather, and this year it looks like there's a little sucker coming out of the dead stump. So I'm trying to see if I can kind of acclimate avocados to here. I kind of live in one of those strange environments where it's tropical 350 days of the year, and then there's 15 days of the year where the environment just says it's going to be 25 degrees and now you can't grow tropical plants as perennials here. So it's like nature just gives me the middle finger like 3 or 4 times a year, which is kind of unfortunate, because if not for those 3 or 4 days of the year where it freezes, we would be a tropical environment and I could grow all kinds of perennials that don't tolerate frost outdoors and never have to worry about taking them in the house. But you know, there are a lot of benefits to having a frost now and then in terms of pest control and things like that. So I'm fine with frost, and I actually kind of like some cool weather once in a while. But I would prefer us to have more frost than we do and cooler weather, or just be completely tropical with no frosts. I don't like this thing where it's mostly tropical all the time and then 4 days of the year it freezes and all your tropical plants die. It's just kind of frustrating. So now I put all my tropical plants in huge fabric pots and just bring them in the house. Speaking of tropical plants, this is a papaya tree, and I mean, I'm almost 5'11", and this thing is nearly twice my height. And the funniest part about it was, when I got these papaya trees, they should have gone in huge fabric pots, like this one here. The type of fabric pot that is 40 gallons of soil. That would be possibly enough to support a fruiting papaya tree. But when I got them, they were kind of in awful condition. They actually weren't nearly that big. They've grown 3 or 4 feet in the last 2 months. They weren't nearly that big. They looked kind of sad, and one of them was already dying. So I didn't want to, put them in 40 gallons worth of really nice potting mix. And I also didn't have huge fabric pots at the time, so I think they only went in I want to say these are 7 or 10 gallon fabric pots. Look at that nasty slug down there. But yeah, I mean, this isn't good. This is like a 7-gallon pot, and the base of this papaya tree it's huge. I think this thing's just gonna fall over. It's leaning really badly to one side. Like I said, it's also way too tall for me to get this thing into the house this winter. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I got a second one over here. I don't even know if they're gonna make fruits, because I've never grown papaya before, and I've heard that you have to have a male and a female plant, and I only have 2 because one died, so I'm not sure if I even have a male and a female papaya plant. Anyway, we're supposed to be doing a garden tour, and I keep stopping to look at stuff. We're supposed to be moving. This is carrot that is going to seed, and I've had a little pet caterpillar out here. I had this guy in the house when he was a baby because I was worried the wasps were going to get him. I think I made a video like a week and a half ago, and I had this guy in the house and he pooped all over my house. But if I had left him out here as a baby, the wasps I think would have gotten him. They take out most of the caterpillars every year, the good ones and the bad ones. Not that there's necessarily good caterpillars. If you're trying to grow something they're eating, they're all bad. But anyway, so I didn't really mean to let these carrots go to seed, but I suppose they are, and they're in huge fabric pots, and they're getting chewed by rodents, but they'll probably make a bunch of seed. And judging by the way the parsnip naturalized itself all over the garden, I'm wondering if carrot will do the same thing. I don't really have any experience growing carrots. It was one of those crops I never really grew before. But I don't know, they're pretty easy to grow, and seed's cheap, and so I just started scattering carrot seed around the gardens last year, and it seems like a lot of them came up, so hopefully they'll self-sow as well. Here's some dill that's self-sowing. The zinnias have, I don't know if they're naturalized yet. They've only been here about 1.5 years, 2 years, but that's not a zinnia I planted. It's just one from seed that got dropped last year. I forgot about this. This is my cool little 2x2x4 at this point. It's not a very big raised bed in terms of its width or its length, but it's like almost 4 feet tall. I'm about to get stung by a wasp. This is another one of our lemon trees, I think. It's funny, the other one has like 25 lemons on it, or 20, and this has maybe like 3. And these trees are the exact same size, same age, in the same pots, in the same soil. I think the one that has more lemons actually had more shade on it, but I think this was getting out-competed by clover earlier this year. Why is there clover growing with my citrus trees? Because some clover dropped its seed and fell in there. All this red clover here is flowering very pretty. This is a tangerine tree, or bush, tangerine bush. Man, I really try to keep these garden tours like shorter, but if I walk too fast, the image gets all blurry and out of focus, and then you can't see stuff, so I have to kind of walk slowly. But when I walk slowly around the garden, it takes like 25 or 30 minutes. This is another tropical fruit tree. This is my dwarf tamarillo. I have 2 of them. This is a littler one in a small pot. I definitely haul this thing in the house every December or so. It stays there till about March. It doesn't like anything under about 45. But it makes a ton of fruits, and they just fruit constantly. It's not like a seasonal fruit tree. It's more like a cherry tomato, which it is somewhat closely related to. It just produces fruit constantly. This is a sad little lemon tree that's getting eaten by something. I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. This is a huge mess. This isn't even one that I started from seed. No wonder it looks so awful. This was from the nursery. All the grafted stuff from the nursery is just so weak and sad compared to the seed-started trees. Look at this pretty sunflower that I didn't plant, but is about to flower. Should go around and see that from the other side. These are sunchokes. I think I showed you all my loquat tree a couple days ago. Talked about how much it had grown recently. This we talked about, I think, last week, how scary this parsnip is, so I'm not going to go any further back here. But I do need to find a way to get back here to harvest all this edamame. I think about like oh man, I was just looking at this pepper a couple days ago. Is that squirrels? This is way too high off the ground to be rodents. Damn, that's unfortunate. I suppose that could also be birds, but it's not even ripe yet, and birds usually wait till peppers are ripe because they're the natural seed dispersers of peppers, and pepper seed isn't viable until the oh man, every one of these. Oh my gosh. And these aren't even gonna make any seeds. They're completely ruined. They're all full of rainwater. That's 5 peppers off one plant that got destroyed. Oh, the edamame's getting chewed. That is the one downside to a garden getting really, really big and out of control, is that you're growing so much food that you can't keep up with stuff, and then stuff just gets eaten by wildlife. This is why I like patty pans instead of zucchini or yellow crookneck. I don't grow a lot of squash here because it's too wet, but anytime you do grow squash, you're gonna get all kinds of like rabbits and rodents and squirrels trying to eat the juicy little fruits. But the patty pan have a tougher exterior. That's why they take a lot longer to cook, and so sometimes squirrels just decide it isn't worth the effort. So I can still salvage this. I'll just cut that piece off and eat the rest of it. But yes, we were talking about the edamame. There's the edamame, Japanese soybeans. My first year growing those, pretty excited. There's a lot of plants in here, and I gotta find a way to get to them. Wow, this is just a huge mess of food. I garden like a toddler trying to cook. Imagine if you put like a toddler in like a kitchen of a 5-star restaurant and just let him like use all the best ingredients and just make a huge mess. It's kind of what my garden's like. It's all kinds of amazing organic food, and you're just tripping over food, but it's a huge mess. This is a bunch of oregano in here. That's a little farm dog next to a pot of leeks. Ay. Sometimes I get a little overwhelmed out here because there's so much to do. There's things to pick, and there's weeds to whack, and there's These are a bunch of beans that are now climbing my shed. I don't expect these to really produce a whole lot more pods until the temperatures cool down, but last summer they managed to hang on through like August, and then by the end of September they were producing again. I better go ahead and start picking some of these bell peppers earlier. I wanted to let them ripen, but if they're all gonna get eaten by squirrels, it's not worth it. So I'm just gonna start picking them green, I think. This is my first year having real success with bell peppers. I'd always grown hot peppers, which I find to be easier to grow. They're slower to germinate and sometimes slower to grow, but once they get started, they're hardier plants, in my opinion. Bells seem to be one of the weakest, least vigorous types of, oh, sorry, buddy. Bells seem to be one of the least vigorous types of all peppers. The fruits are gigantic, obviously, but the plants tend to actually have a much weaker character compared to other peppers, at least from all the ones I've grown. So you got to be patient with bells and, really give them a nice weed-free environment, make sure they get plenty of fertilizer. And it's not the type of plant you can really leave alone. But at least they don't need a lot of water. Alright, I think we saw most of the garden. It's interesting, all of the Mexican oregano is in full flower, and the Greek oregano, I was gonna say it hasn't flowered at all, but I think I see the first flowers. The Greek oregano has purple flowers, and the Mexican oregano has white flowers. The leaf shape's a little different. The Greek oregano's got a smoother leaf, it's a little darker, a little bit more green color, like a darker blue-green. Whereas the Mexican oregano is kind of a limer green. Mexican oregano's got a spicier flavor, and the leaves tend to be bigger, so it's a little easier to harvest and use in the kitchen. But the Greek oregano, while it doesn't have as spicy of a flavor, the flavor is more intense and more concentrated. Probably has more, I don't know, essential oils or something in it. It's just more pungent. But that's interesting to see one of them in full flower and one of them just starting to flower. But yeah, I think we saw most of the garden. I was talking about how I got to plant all this today, and this cannot be tomatoes or peppers or eggplant or tomatillos or fall potatoes or tobacco or petunias, because I had spring potatoes in pretty much every one of these pots. So it wouldn't be a good idea for me to plant anything in the potato family in any of these pots for a little while. Especially since I'm kind of doing the no-till thing, even with the pots. I think a lot of people, at the end of the season, they pull their plants out of the containers and dump all the soil out. Hopefully most people reuse their soil, mix it up and reuse it, but I don't even do that anymore. I don't even bother to dump it out of here and amend it and refill them up, especially when you're working with fabric pots that are 40 gallons. It's a massive amount of work to dump all that out and then, amend it and then put it back. So I kind of do a no-till thing where I just scrape all the plants off the top, and then I just add fertilizer, organic fertilizer, compost, all that to the surface. So I don't even really change the soil structure. Maybe about the top 3 inches is what changes. And the top 3 inches gets heavily amended with some rich compost and fertilizer. And that seems to work great. And as long as I plant something from a different family, I don't tend to have any issues with reusing potting mix without changing it or sterilizing it or doing really anything. So yeah, you can kind of see the trend here. It's all about finding ways to produce massive amounts of food without having to spend tons of time and energy and money at it. So you find these little tips and tricks here and there to get better. But yeah, I think this video's run long enough. We saw most of the stuff in the garden. I try to do these tours about twice a month or so. Sometimes I have little special topics, like when we figure out what I'm going to plant back there. Really, y'all need to comment in the comments section, what do you think I should plant back here? Or tell me what to plant in the containers too. Because like I said, I can't plant anything in the potato, tomato, pepper family here. I also don't want to plant squash in here because it's getting too late of the year to plant squash. Caterpillars are starting to come in. I've already had plenty of squash this year. I really don't know what to plant in these. It's a tough choice. I thought about doing just some more beans and stuff, but beans really do better in the ground, and beans don't really justify huge pots of potting mix. So I need to think about something special, something important to plant in here. I might even do some tropical stuff, since a lot of this stuff I can bring in the house. If not, maybe I'll just start planting citrus trees in here. But tell me what to plant in these. Tell me what to plant in this huge area that's super fertile but is kind of shady, and tell me what to plant in the 2x2x4 raised bed over here. That also can't be anything in the potato family because it was a potato box earlier this year. I thought about doing some cucumbers in the 2x2x4, but I got probably 30 cucumber plants already. I got the huge ones over here. I got 10 more in pots over there by the fence. I got 4 or 5 more in the front yard. I don't know if I need any more cucumbers, but anyway, y'all give me some ideas about what to plant. Thank y'all for tuning in today, and hope your gardens are doing well.